Hello ladies, gentlemen, welcome back to the most requested video on the channel, a Bruiser guide for, I guess, the end of Season 9. Now, this might change as the Season 10 comes out, so make sure you're checking the channel, maybe you even subscribe in order to be updated further once the Season 10 drops. But for now, let's go ahead and jump right into the build guide, and well, it's time for me to tell you everything I know about Bruiser. We are going to be jumping across multiple accounts, because a couple of accounts have a specific type of build and the others have a different type of build, and I'll just tell you all about it, so let's jump right into it. Firstly, let's talk about valid artifacts when it comes to Bruiser. Arguably the most important one is the Tumbler feat reps. Almost every single Bruiser will be playing these. You either add freedom on them or insatiable gravity well. Those are the only two valid options in my opinion. Everything else is not worth it. And the second artifact that is extremely important is Ankh. You're gonna get this from the PvP track, and you're gonna get the Tumbler feat traps from the OPR caches. When it comes to Ankh, you have a couple of options as to what perk you put onto it. Stamina recovery is my preferred choice because of my playstyle, and I will talk more about this later. However, some very valid options are strike protection, slash protection, and obviously now with the popularity of the Crescent Wave, arcane protection is actually a very valid option here as well. Now, while we're at the topic of the stamina recovery, let me very quickly explain as to why I personally played. I played because I also utilize the Tempest Fury. Now, on the accounts where I don't utilize the Tempest Fury, I believe protection is better, but the accounts that do play Tempest Fury, I believe stamina recovery is better. And why is that? I spend a lot of time on my hammer. Now, if you spend a lot of time on your greataxe, you can then utilize the passive, which is the Mauler's Resolve, which is basically an in greataxe build stamina recovery. As you can see, if you get hit while holding the greataxe and below 50 health, you gain 40 stamina, perfect. However, if you're mainly utilizing hammer, that will not proc for you. So the way I like to play it, as I'm prioritizing hammer, I play hammer, and then when my stamina recovery procs once, I will usually swap to greataxe, use greataxe until my stamina recovery procs on the Ankh, and then I can go back to playing standard. So I have a lot of extra dodges just because of utilizing this perk. I went a little bit over explaining this, but this is my personal preference as to why I prefer stamina recovery on the Ankh. And another artifact worth mentioning here, alongside Tempest Fury of course, which you can get from the Winter Rune Forge, which you can find in the Activities Season Trials section. This is a very common drop, you clear this twice and you basically get it. And another artifact worth mentioning here would be the Mjolnir. That is going to be your Warhammer. It is definitely not a bis option, I'd say it's like a pre-bis option or a budget option. So if you have a very good greataxe, like a nice little 3-perker, for example the Refreshing Move, Maelstrom and Sundering Stacks, you can then go ahead and make yourself a Mjolnir, and on the Mjolnir you just put Trenchant Strikes as a perk and you're gonna be perfectly happy. But once again on the Tempest Fury we're putting Sundering Stacks, by far the best option if you ever plan on playing the spinner. However, all of that being said, let's actually talk about valid weapon choices. I just mentioned Mjolnir, I just mentioned Tempest Fury, but you can totally get away with playing just your standard greataxe Warhammer, no artifacts. So when it comes to the hammer, your best option is probably gonna be the Shockwave, Trenchant Strikes, Plague Strikes. That is a very common hammer. However, on this account, as you can see, I'm using basically a free option. I'm using a Penetrating Empower Trenchant Strikes 2-perker on a Smash Barrel over here. But obviously you can use something like Penetrating Empower, Trenchant Strikes and Attunement if you want a triple damage hammer, or even a Shockwave. I think by far the most popular method is Shock, Trenchant, Plague Strikes on your hammer in order to reduce healing of the healers. When it comes to the greataxe and you're not using the Tempest Fury, by far the best option is a Refreshing Move, Maelstrom and Sundering Stacks. That is your bis option. You will have to handcraft that. There is no way around it to get it differently as far as I know. Now that we have all the weapon choices kind of out of the way, let's very quickly talk about the jewelry when it comes to Bruiser. Your must-have is Ankh. There is almost no question about it. Nothing else comes even close to how good this is. And obviously as you're playing Bruiser, you will always or almost always have a healer alongside you, especially when we're talking wars, especially when we're talking OPRs. If you do not have a healer, you probably do not want to play Bruiser. You're gonna have no fun, simply put. So Ankh is a must-have. We already covered the perks you want to put on it. Just to refresh your memory, either stamina recovery, strike protection, slash protection, or arcane protection. Now, a popular choice is strike protection, and then you put slash conditionings on your gear, so you kind of cover the greataxe and Warhammer all in once. but I already mentioned that I prefer stam recovery myself. When it comes to ring, your best choices are hearty slash damage empowered cleave or hearty strike damage empowered cleave. When it comes to anything different to this, like those are your base options, and if you want to be, you know, a little bit more on the cheaper side of things, you can go hearty empowered cleave as a 2-perker, and then you find some sort of a third perk that is worth a little bit less. I believe there are somewhere when you click detonate or vines, you're gonna also get cleansed, so you can look for some cheap 2-perk options, but your base options are for sure hearty empowered cleave with slash damage or strike damage, perhaps lightning damage if you're playing Mjolnir, and then you put a lightning gem onto your greataxe. But now at this point we're already overcooking a little bit. Just go with one of the basics. When it comes to eating, your options are very simple. Fortifying toast, refreshing toast are your must-have 2 perks, and on this account, for example, I have healing heart. That is not base. You would want to have like regenerating. You could even argue having nimble, but most important are fortifying toast, refreshing toast. Everything else is just a little added bonus. Now that you have a good understanding of your weapons, you have a good understanding of your jewelry, let's talk a little bit about armor. And this is where you can really start to see some very strong pieces that are very crucial. I would say, alongside the obvious, the tumbler foot wraps being your best in slot option, where you either add freedom or gravity well onto that. Let's quickly talk about the perks that are very, very necessary when it comes to the Bruiser. First of all, the most important perk in my opinion at the moment is Vital Synergy. As you can see, while health is below 50%, you gain 15% stam regen, and also while stam is below 50%, your incoming healing is big. So think about the big clumps that you sometimes get caught in. This is gonna save you a lot of the time. So this is a really, really must-have perk in my opinion right now. The other must-have perk is the Insatiable Gravity Well. Obviously we have it on this piece right here. That is a must-have, there's no question about it. And those are the only 2 perks where I would say they are a must-have. Obviously if you're running Maelstrom, you're gonna have that on the greataxe. If you're running Shockwave, you're gonna have that on the greataxe. Going down the list a little bit, what's extremely important is to make sure you have 4 freedoms. As a Bruiser, you want to be left-clicking as much as possible. You want to have as minimal downtime as possible. So if you're stunned, if you can't left-click, if you can't move around the point, you're gonna be useless. So freedom is a must-have. Make sure you have 4 of them so you maximize the time where you're like not stunned, not frozen. And then the second best option in my opinion is Enchanted Ward at the moment. A lot of my build is gonna be consisting of freedom, Enchanted Ward, and something. So I don't even care if my third perk is health, slash conditioning, strike conditioning, like whatever it is. As long as I have freedom, Enchanted Ward, I'm very happy. So a couple of great options for the pieces would be freedom, Enchanted Health, which is your hoplite pieces, which you can get for free from Gorgon, and you can loot bias these, so they are very easy to get as long as you're clearing your weekly Gorgons. At this point, everybody should have a build to clear your weekly Gorgons. If you're taking the game somewhat seriously, get yourself these pieces as the start, and then if you want to invest more money into it, push it into a freedom enchanted ward slash conditioning, or push it into freedom enchanted ward and a perk of your choice if that's what you prefer. For example, a couple of options that are underutilized but still kind of useful, I would say, is freedom enchanted Thorny Reflection, which is something you can only have on your gloves, or freedom enchanted ward Path of Destiny, which can actually give you a nice sustain sometimes, but not a lot of people use this, so you can pick for yourself. I think Freedom Enchanted Health is a great baseline, and then you move it on to Freedom Enchanted Ward slash Conditioning as your best in slot option. But just to quickly go over what I have Freedom Enchanted Health here on the head, free option. I have Freedom Enchanted Ward Vital Synergy on the body, best in slot option. We have Enchanted Ward slash Conditioning Gravity Well here on the gloves, best in slot option. We have Freedom Enchanted Ward slash Conditioning here on the legs, best in slot option. However, if you are a PvE enjoyer, you can go ahead and farm an arguably competitive piece of gear. So if we quickly take a look at the Elite Trials, Season of Trial of the Devourer, we can see more information on the armor pieces. There are two pieces worth mentioning here for a Bruiser. One of them is the Sandlion Carapace, this body. So as you can see, it has keenly fortified Great Ward, and you can put something like Slash Conditioning on top of it, but then you need to make sure that 4 of your other pieces have freedom on it. Or you can put a freedom on this, but it's a little bit awkward. Obviously, you want it in a 7-5 form. I personally do not recommend this, simply because of the Vital Synergy being so valid. What I would recommend is this, Sandlion Coxa. So what this does is it gives you Elemental Aversion, which is a good option, obviously, instead of the Enchanted Ward, and it gives you Keenly Empowered, which is an illegal perk. Yeah, you can't really get this on an armor piece anywhere else. So you're gonna be sacrificing a little bit of your tankiness for quite a bit of your bonus damage. And then on these, again, you're either putting the Grav on it or you're putting the Freedom on it, depending on what you have on your tumblers. So this is like an option that's valid. However, if you want to be as tanky as possible, this would be your best in slot option, your Freedom Enchanted Word / Conditioning. And then obviously my tumblers we mentioned earlier, either Freedom or Gravity Well. Those are the only real valid options, I would say, for your tumbler fit reps, if you want to make the build as easy as possible. So now I have a good understanding of your armor, weapons, jewelry. What is next that is very important? Let's go ahead and talk about Heartrunes, for example, here. You're gonna see this account has Vines equipped. Most of the Bruisers are gonna have Detonate equipped. However, when I'm calling, I like playing Vines, and I'm also playing Spinner on this account. So Spinner, great way to reposition around the map. Bait, catch good vines, and then others can collapse on me. However, most people will be using Detonate. Now, there's really two options. As you can see, we have Brutal Heartrune of Grasping Vines or Brutal Heartrune of Detonate, and the 99% of the people watching this video should be making a Brutal Heartrune of Detonate. If you're interested as to where to obtain this, you want to just be clearing Eniad. It can be regular. It is the dungeon over here in Brimstone Sands. Very easy to clear. You can just go ahead into activities, expeditions, and you can queue up for the Eniad right over here. And when it comes to vines, if you're still interested to them, you can get those in the Garden of Genesis. Those are going to be your 2 dungeons, providing you with a hard run of your choice. Now, obviously, you're going to start off with the blue one, and then you upgrade it further on, I believe, in the forge or a stone cutting. Anyways, figure it out where you update it. It's in one of the stations. You want to make sure it's 700 and in the brutal form. Now, with Heartrunes out of the way, let's very quickly talk about the consumables. Consumables are a very important part of every war. You're gonna go ahead and start your war 10 minutes before the war starts, You're gonna go ahead and use your powerful honing stone. You're then gonna follow that up with either a roasted rabbit with seasoned vegetables or with a roasted gnufish. That's gonna give you 48 strength. That's gonna give you 48 con. It depends how much magnify problems you might have on your account. And then you're gonna finish it off with a hearty meal, and you're gonna also finish it up with a desert sunrise. Those are your pre-pots. This is what you do before war, and you're set for 1 hour. And then the actual consumables you're gonna be using in the middle of a war are gonna be Infused Burst Regeneration Potion, which I think is the best option. You could, in theory, replace this with either a Regenerating Potion or an Infused Health Potion, or in some very rare cases, Regenerating Serum. I would not recommend the Regenerating Serum because the cooldown is way too long. If you're interested in normal Regeneration Potion, it's gonna give you less initial burst of heal, but more over the time healing. So it's an okay thing to pre-pot. And then Potion, you just wait until you're low HP to click it. I personally play the Infused Burst Regen Potion. It is kinda in the middle of both the regular potion and the Regen Potion. It gives you a little bit of a burst of a health at start, and then it gives you like a nice sustained health as the time goes on. Now you're gonna see something weird here. You're gonna see an Infused Mana Potion. You may be wondering, why would this idiot play an Infused Mana Potion in the middle of a war? Well, we do have a Fortifying Toast. So every time we click 5, we have 13 seconds cooldown. But Fortifying Toast has a 10-second cooldown. So if you are smart with the utilization of the potions, you can guarantee that you have 20% fortify almost throughout the entire war. There's going to be a 5-second window where you're not fortified if you're playing efficiently, and you always make sure you click some sort of a potion before entering any sort of a clump as a bruiser. So keep that in mind. That's why the mana potion is there. Now, on my slot number 4, there will always be a cleansing potion. This is something that is only war specific. Actually, it's in OPRs as well these days. And what you do is before you enter the big clumps, you make sure you're cleansed in order to provide the max amount of damage output. And then the most changeable consumable would be your last slot. In this case, I'm using Infused Arcane Absorption Potions at the moment. A very valid option is Infused Fire Absorption Potion as well. A valid option would be an Oak Flesh Balm, and a valid option would be a Gemstone Dust. Now, my preference at the moment is Arcane Absorption Potions, simply due to the massive increase in the Crescent Wave users. If you don't know what a Crescent Wave is, a great sword that throws a massive AoE hit. A lot of companies are playing it right now on our server, so this is almost a must-have in my opinion right now. In the past, that used to be Fire Absorption, and even before that, it used to be Oak Flesh. So make sure you have all of these available, and you adjust based on, you know, the meta that you're playing in. Right now, I guarantee you, Arcane Pot is going to be almost a must-have for most people. In the future, that could change, so just be willing to adapt, is what I would say here. Now, I touched a little bit on the attributes before going into this video, but most bruisers really have two valid options. I'm gonna go ahead and actually use the food buff right now to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So this is how I personally play when I'm calling. So I'm going for 350 con, 300 strength, and when I'm not calling, I like to play 350 strength, 300 con. Both are great options. It comes down to your preference. If you're going 350 strength, you're gonna be able to deal more damage, obviously, but if you're going 350 con, you're gonna be able to take less damage. Simply put, you get a little bit extra reduction when you have an active grit, which as a bruiser is almost the entire time, and as a spinner, it is almost entire time, literally. So you want to make sure you figure out which way you want to go about it. I would recommend 350 con, 300 strength, and then when you get more and more comfortable, you switch this down to 300 con, and you switch this up to 350 strength. Now, in the case where you're not 725 gear score, make sure you reach 300, and at that point, just put as many points as you have into strength, and keep con 300 until you can reach this threshold. What I'm saying here is never sacrifice reaching 300 strength for having more con. So always make sure you're reaching 300 strength, make sure you're reaching 300 con, and then put all the points into strength until you can reach the 350 con. Okay? So this is gonna be how you wanna play it, basically. And now let's go ahead and jump into some masteries. Now, let's go ahead over the hammer first, because this one has a couple of changes that you can go into, but really it is pretty standard. Now, you will see the only difference that I have between most bruisers is the fact that I use both quick recovery and acceleration. You could in theory throw one of these out and just put it in the exhaustive attacks, or some might prefer to have increased armor by 20% when surrounded by people. I don't care about this perk, and this perk would be nice to have, but the way I play, quick recovery acceleration is super important for me. The way I move around the point when I don't want to waste stamina is I half heavy attack and then light, half heavy attack and then light. And when you're aiming towards players, this actually drags and moves you even more than now. Look, I can just be left clicking and you see how that moves my character. But if I'm aiming onto the player during the war, this is gonna move my character without me needing to use my stamina. And obviously we then utilize stamina when we need to. So I'll be utilizing this almost the entire time. And not to mention, right, we are playing on an account with the Tempest Fury, so I even get bonus haste, so I'm moving around the point even easier, because haste also makes you drag around much easier. That's why I prefer to play the Tempest Fury to begin with. So let's go ahead over some basic perks that you must have. All of the armor breaker perks, some people do not prefer to take opening act. I think this is a really good perk to have. You can chuck it onto the clumps and it deals massive amount of damage before the explosion goes through. All the perks in POD, some people don't like taking the last one. I think it's extremely good. You get a nice little reduction on the CDR when you hit a lot of people. Happens all the time in wars. You must have all the perks in the shockwave anyways. Prevailing Spirit is a must have in my opinion. You get massive heals with it. Concussive Impact is really good. You deal 15% bonus damage against debuffs. Very good to have. We covered acceleration and quick recovery already. Power Through Pain is a must have in my opinion. 35% extra damage after 1 second of taking damage all the time. Contemptation, heavy attack damage increase when the enemies are low, very good for securing kills. Grit, obviously, and bonus damage reduction, very good to have. Empower on heavy attacks, very good to have. A little bit of more increased armor penetration, very good to have. So the only one we're not getting is exhaustive attacks, which is also pretty good to have, right? Abilities apply exhaust to players, so their stam regen is slower. Definitely consider taking it and maybe drop the acceleration for it. This armor one is good as well, but I don't think anything else is worth sacrificing to get it. Now, if you're like me and you played the Spinner greataxe, the Tempest Fury artifact, this is usually going to be how your skill tree is going to look like. There is not a lot of room for change, just some very small adaptations. Obviously, you're taking all of the perks in Whirlwind, you're taking all of the perks in Maelstrom, you're taking all of the perks in Gravity Well. The Enduring Strike is super important because when you are greeted, you will obviously receive the 12% base damage reduction, which is really massive. The Crowded Protection, obviously when you're holding a greataxe, you gain 20% armor, again, all the time present, like really good to have. And then you have Center of Attention as well. While you're holding a greataxe, you gain Empower. And obviously the most important perk on a greataxe is the Molder Resolve, which is the inbuilt stamina recovery. And the only change that you could really theoretically do is you could sacrifice Enduring Strike for Frustration, and that would then make it so you would deal more damage, because oftentimes your attacks will be blocked by an SNS or a Flail or something like that, and you will get those in power stacks. That's a little bit of a risky choice because you will be losing a lot of the damage reduction, and you could replace your Death's Embrace with critical gains in order to just heal a little bit more, but then deal a little bit less damage. So in this case, we're going full tanky on the right side. You can't really skip on any of those. And then obviously we're going for Greed, Death's Embrace, and Keen's Edge. Now, again, you can play around and change a couple of things here, but you don't really have too many options. I currently think this is the best page to use when you are playing the Tempest Fury. I'm doing a very quick account swap right now in order to show you how a normal greataxe tree would look like when you're not actually spinning around the point. So we're now located on an account that actually has a best-in-slot greataxe. This is what I was talking about earlier, Refreshing Move and Fibbling Maelstrom, Sundering Stacks. And if we go ahead and look at our Weapon Mastery here, you will be able to see that we are now collecting all the important perks. We have the full Maelstrom, full Gravity Well, we have Crowded Protection, Center of Attention, Mauler's Fury, very important Enduring Strike. This time we actually do get the 12% bonus damage reduction from the grid, Mauler's Resolve being the most important perk. We have Charge, and we pick all of these nice passives to go with it. This is like the meta, right? This is what you would want to play on a Bruiser. That's why Charge is arguably a little bit more popular. This is your standard Bruiser meta page when you're not playing the Tempest Fury. Now that you have a very good understanding of everything gear related, skill tree related, stats related, like even Heartrune related when it comes to Bruiser, let's just very quickly talk about some combos. I'm not gonna spend too long talking about it, and we're now on the account that doesn't even have Detonate, so it's going to be a little bit annoying to show. But the idea is, as a Bruiser, you want to be just left clicking all the time. All the time you want to be providing some sort of damage and charging up your Heartrune. The good part about Bruiser is you have a shit ton of health to work with, and your best way of being useful is by always committing on your shot callers, bomb calls. Obviously, you don't want to just randomly die every time there's a bomb call, right? But you want to make sure you're going into the bomb calls with the most amount of possibility of getting out alive. So how does this look like? Usually there's two ways of bombing. Either you're going first or you're going second. If you're going first, you want to pop your cleansing. Obviously, we're not in a position where we have cleansing potions, so we're just going to be using these strong mana potions as an example. The way this works is you want to pre-pot either your fire, arcane, some sort of protection pot, but you want to click that first, right, as you're left clicking. Then you want to pop your cleansing. In this case, I'll just click 4, and then you want to do your full combo with detonate. So I've clicked my detonate, I did my shock, I did my grab, I did my spin, and you get out as fast as possible. So this is because we bombed first, right? You use your full combo with the detonate. Maybe you don't have all spells, you just give a couple of left clicks. As soon as your detonate explodes, your dodge charging out of the clump. What you don't want to do if you're going first on a bomb is you don't want to overstay in a bomb and then get caught in a counter bomb. However, as a contrary, if you're going second on a bomb call, this is a preferred way of bombing always. It is going to be much better because you're going to be popping the same pre-pot into cleansing, into deto, into left click, grab, shock, spin. You're going to be using all of your spells and even more left clicks and even more dogging before getting out of the clump. So that's why bombing second is better, because you can go ahead, greed, and confirm kills a little bit better. But other than that, there is not really too much more when it comes to Bruiser. It's all about occupying as much space as you can and committing on your caller's bomb attacks, and most importantly, you do everything you can not to die. As a Bruiser, you're holding space, you're trying not to die, and you're trying to push other Bruisers out of the point, other healers out of the point. And that's all there is to it, really. I don't think there's anything else I need to add. The best way to improve as a Bruiser is to actually go ahead, build it up, and play it for yourself, and you will figure out the limit tests that you can do and the limit tests that you can't. And if you're still unsure as to how to play, there are a ton of other streamers, even me, a ton of war VODs that you can go ahead and check in order to improve as a Bruiser. For example, we have over 500 Bruiser war videos on the channel. You can pick any one of those and see if you can further improve your skills by perhaps watching and seeing what somebody else does. That was probably everything that I have for you for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, a simple like goes a long way. Make sure you're subscribed. When the season 10 drops, we're probably gonna go ahead and release an updated guide as soon as the gear is somewhat suitable. And as always, if there's any changes, I will do my best in order to update the description or the pinned comment to let you know that there have been changes or what is an updated best in slot option. I'll see you again very soon in another video, and until then, have a good one. Bye-bye.